everybody, it's me again. I'm giving you my blog update on season 6 of The Walking Dead, episode 13, entitled "The Same Boat." I know I watched it last week, but eventually I got quite busy, so I'm here today and I'm going to discuss the episode with you now. Okay. It all started off between Maggie and Carol were being held hostage by a bunch of women and a man. It started when Carol shot that man and Maggie wanted to finish him, and she said, and Carol told her no, and then this woman, redhead woman Paula, said, and there's this redhead woman Paula pointing a gun at Carol, says, "Put the gun down." So eventually she did, and then he got the walkie-talkie, and she had the binoculars seeing what the other group was doing. And eventually Paula told them to speak and told Carol and Maggie to speak and all that. And so they say, "I'm fine. We're fine, Rick. Everything will work out." And eventually, there's this one lady I don't know what her name is, but she was a real bitch. She told him, "Nice jacket, bitch." So she commented about Maggie's jacket. But then all of a sudden, their coats were being put over their heads, and then they started, they were like duct taped their hands together, and they took them to this massacre place. Then it was like some kind of abandoned warehouse or something, or abandoned slaughterhouse or something like that. And eventually they were both tied with their hands and feet together in duct tape. And eventually that's when Carol they were gagged in the mouth too, but then Carol started to hyperventilate so badly, and Maggie went, and then the people came back and says, "What's her problem?" He goes, "She's hyperventilating. Remove her gag." And so Carol started hyperventilating, and then eventually they finally got the gag off. And so when they were trying to tend Donnie, their injured friend, they said, "Hold on, we're coming." So they had to tie his arm up and put a stick in it so it won't be infected. But Meg kept saying he needs help, he needs medical help. If you don't give him medical help, his arm will be infected, he'll lose his arm, or he'll die. But Paula told Maggie to shut up as usual. And so eventually Carol found a rosary dropped on the floor, so she picked it up, and eventually this Donnie guy came over to her and says, "Don't make me." And says, "So you're the bitch that shot me." And then Donnie started hitting Carol, and Maggie went, "You leave her alone." And so Maggie went to Carol's defense and started hitting the guy and hitting Donnie, and then all of a sudden, and then when Donnie started taking over, Paula just bumped Donnie on the head and knocked him out cold. Then there was this girl named Molly, and eventually she was coughing up blood. And eventually we now know she has advanced stage lung cancer, and she's still smoking. Carol told Molly, "Those things will kill you." And she goes, "Yeah, we're in the same boat." And eventually, Paula was looking at Carol's rosary, and Paula went, "Do you believe in that crap?" And then she goes, "Faith got me through the death of my daughter, but whatever you do, take me. Don't hurt Maggie. Don't hurt the baby." So eventually, one of the ladies, I don't know what her name is, we'll call her the brown-haired, brunetted bitch, took Maggie and took her into another room, and while Paula has been left alone with Carol. And Paula was talking to Carol about her life, and she said, "I was just a warm body. body, and eventually she told the story about her, how she was a secretary. She tried to make her secretary, her boss, really happy, and then she had a husband and four daughters, and then everything else, and talking about her life. And then eventually, when the world went to hell, she had to kill her boss to survive. And then she lost her family. And so then she told this story about when she was very Paula was really upset. She talked about what her mother did, and she said she took 3 pots of water and boiled them. Yeah, one item in the pot was a carrot. Item number 2 in the pot was an egg. And the third pot had coffee beans in it. Okay, and as soon as, about 10-15 minutes later, Paula told Carol when she put the carrot in the water, it was very hard and it came out very soft. And when she put the egg in, it was fragile, then it came out really, really strong, hard. And then the coffee beans, it just changed the water. And if you prefer to choose one of these, I prefer the coffee beans. So eventually that was her way of living and showing. And eventually that brunette bitch was with Maggie. They were talking about getting pregnant. And she talked about Maggie who's pregnant, and then she vomited, puked on the floor, morning sickness. So normal for a pregnant woman. And eventually she had a tattoo named Frankie on it. She was supposed to have a baby. She said that she and her boyfriend was going to name the baby Frankie. She thought Frankie was the boyfriend, but eventually it turned out that Frankie was the woman's father, and she was going to name the baby after the woman's father before she lost it. And I kind of felt a little bad for her, but eventually... And eventually, when Carol decided, as soon as everyone was gone, Carol started using the rosary to try to escape out of the duct tape. And eventually she escaped, and then she ripped off the duct tape, and eventually she went next door and found Maggie, and eventually they hugged, and then they decided they have to do everything to get out of here. So eventually they went to Donnie, who was way, way out of it, who's passed out by now. And then Maggie saw the body. His arm was so infected. There was nothing they can do. So Maggie told Carol, she said, "We have a plan." So eventually they were in it together in the plan. Eventually Molly was looking around, and then all of a sudden Molly came in, and then eventually Donnie, who has turned, came and bit Molly on the arm, and then she grabbed her knife and stabbed Donnie in the head, and then she escaped. But eventually this other girl, she was fighting with Maggie, and eventually she wanted to, she tried to kill her, and she tried to fight. She fought her off and fought her, and she says, "Don't." And eventually she had her knife, and then she thought she was going to cut Maggie's stomach, but eventually she was very, very lucky, but they cut Maggie's shirt right to the bottom, because I thought she was going to lose the baby. I thought she was going to kill the baby. But eventually she didn't. She just slashed Maggie's shirt, and then Carol came with a gun and and shot her dead. So eventually that was it. And then Paula came along. She says, "Where are you?" She was angry because her captives escaped. And so eventually Carol kept pointing her gun and says, "Run. Don't stay. Run. Just run. Don't make me. I don't want to kill you." And then she went then she tells the story like she was like crazy and she was like vicious and something like that. And then all of a sudden, like, there were like walkers everywhere, like they were like in stakes and all that. And eventually Carol started fighting with Paula, and eventually Paula and Carol started to fight. She didn't want to kill her, but eventually she didn't have a choice, because right at the end of the fight she shoved Paula right through a sharp stake, and then the walker beside her just bit her on the face. And then eventually Maggie and Carol grabbed the walkie-talkie and said to a bunch of Paula's men, meet us on the kill floor, because that's when Rick and the gang are going after their friends Maggie and Carol, because Paula in the middle of the episode saying told them where they are. And so eventually they'll do the trade. And then all of a sudden there's another, they had to find another way to get Paula's men in. And like they're saying, it's like, because she talked about some guy named Negan, and then it's Molly mentioning, says we are all Negan. So eventually Carol had some gasoline, and eventually she poured it all over the kill floor. And eventually then she lit a cigarette. And then she started, and then she turned around, and then there's a bunch of Paula's men that came, and then all of a sudden she took the cigarette, put it on the gasoline, and it bursted into flames. And so eventually, Maggie and Carol started to escape, killing Paula. Maggie stabbed Paula after she turned, and eventually all Paula's group is dead now. And then when Maggie and Carol held out their guns, because they thought there was going to be intruders, more Paula's people coming in, but it turned out to be like Glenn, Daryl, Rick, Father Gabriel, and Rosita just came in to rescue to rescue Maggie and Carol. Like, Glenn went to Maggie directly, and then Daryl went to Carol right away, and he says, "Are you okay? You hurt? Did you start the fire?" "Yes." And then Daryl went to Carol. "Are you good?" She goes, "No." And Daryl went, "Come here." And he just embraced her. That was the most beautiful thing ever. Like, and I say, "Hey, Carol, Daryl's your man, not Tobin. Wake up!" And then eventually Glenn reunited with Maggie, and Glenn went, "Are you okay?" And then Maggie went, "I can't live like this anymore." And then they embraced. And there's this guy who was on Daryl's bike. His name was Primo. And Rick went, "Okay, I was wondering, who are you and where'd you get the bike?" And he goes, and then Daryl went, "Why don't we just burn them?" And so eventually, and he asked, "Who is Negan? Who is he?" Like, and asked the questions about this. And then Primo said to face in front of Rick, he goes, "I'm Negan, shithead." And then Rick took out his Colt Python, pointed at Primo, and says, "I'm sorry I had to come to this." Bang! And Primo got shot in the head. And then Carol looked on and was so shocked, and then she started, in the ending, she started holding on the rosary so tight that her hand, there was blood coming out of it. And that was the end of the episode. The episode was very well done. Angela Kane wrote that episode, and what I heard in the commentaries, like, she really loved that the ending of the episode where Daryl finally reunited with Carol and they hugged. And although we didn't see much of them through all of season 6, it was very, very nice that it was still their story is still going on. And so that comes to the conclusion about the season 6 episode of The Walking Dead, episode 13, The Same Boat. Very good, some good action, and a wonderful performance by Alicia Witt, who played Paula. I remembered her like on Law and Order: Criminal Intent, and she played the youngest younger sister of Donna Hayward on the on the series Twin Peaks, which I absolutely loved. And she did, although she was only in for one episode, Alicia Witt did an amazing job playing Paula. And we hope we see her again in other projects very, very soon. Okay, so I guess that'll be it for me tonight. And so the next time you see me, we'll be discussing the blog for Season 6, Episode 14, titled Twice as Far. So if you haven't seen this episode of The Same Boat, please do so. Watch before, spoiler alert, before you watch me to give you my opinion. So remember the rules. You can leave comments on this if you want to, but remember the rules. No name calling, no bashing, and no disrespect. So anyways, this is me signing off again, and I hope you all have a great night, and I will see you all again very soon. God bless.